Some years ago, PwC, after a thorough assessment process, came up with 8 essential technologies that are already changing the way we work and the way we do business. There is still a long way to go for them to reach their full potential, but the world is seeing more and more tangible use cases. But there is more. They can work in tandem and somehow augment each other. PwC has isolated 6 convergence themes on the rise. That's what this episode is about, Technology Convergence. Carla and I talk with Scott Likens, emerging technology leader in the United States, China, and Japan. With that out of the way, let's get into it. Welcome to a new episode of TechTalk. This is Season 4, Episode 11. In today's episode, we have a very special guest who lives in a farm on the other side of the pond, or of the ocean if you prefer, and he loves technology. So, Carla, his name is Scott Likens, and he works for PwC in the United States. Welcome, Scott.
Welcome, Scott, and thanks, Luis, for the introduction. Very insightful.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to it. And I would kind of classify it as a ranch. I'm not yet farming, but I'm going to be. So thank you for the introduction. I love living on the land.
Okay, so that's a dream to come.
That's right. That's right.
Or a project to come. Okay.
Many projects to come.
Okay, that's very nice, especially in these times. So
yes.
you can run free, and without, with
well,
little
my
danger.
dream is to have the farm bot. So it's a 3D printed farming robot. So I can actually plant my garden through the computer and have it monitor the water and weeds and. Because I have less time to farm than you need. So I like to infuse technology into everything, and farming will be the next wave.
That sounds awesome.
And that's truly technology convergence. That is the subject of today.
That's right. That's right.
So great way to introduce.
Yes. So the episode is called the one on technology convergence, and actually we are here to talk to Scott about this and what this is, because it's convergence truly is not a new concept, but the technologies we are proposing that will converge, that is the new thing. So, well, Carla, you can kick off the episode with the first question, please.
Oh, okay. Well, the first question really is about the Essential 8. What are they, and how did PwC come up with them?
Yeah, so it actually goes back many years, probably 6 or 8, when we started our emerging tech research. We started looking at what was really changing our clients' businesses, and I adore alliteration. So the Essential 8 were the ones that we came up with, and they're probably technologies everyone would guess. So things like artificial intelligence, that's obviously very well known. Augmented reality, drones, virtual reality, 3D printing, Internet of Things, robotics, and then one of my favorites, blockchain. And what happens is every year we're looking at what's happening in the market. We're scanning it. We actually wrote a little bit of machine learning to try and absorb, what's the most popular technology? Where are people investing in startups? What are our clients doing? And then there's the human intelligence. We just look at it and say, are these the Essential 8? And every year we pressure test it. And so far, these have been, stayed the Essential 8. Now you'll recognize essential, not emerging 8. It's the Essential 8. We think these are essential emerging technologies that we think every business should be thinking about, no matter what industry you're in or what country you're in. We think they're essential. So we scan about 250 to 280 technologies continuously. And so far, I wanted to get to the next 9, but we really haven't seen anything break through yet to be essential. Right? There's lots of great technologies out there. People will say quantum, they'll say 5G. So we'll talk about those in the convergence. But so far, these are the Essential 8.
I had in mind 5G because I think 5G is not part of this Essential 8, or is it?
It's not. When we'll talk about a convergence theme called hyper-connected networks. To me, 5G, I like to use the analogy, when we went from 3G to 4G, did it change our lives? I would say no. It made surfing the web easier, right? It made downloading movies on our phone easier, but it wasn't a fundamental change. So I think 5G is a bit more of a shift, obviously. It's a bigger shift than the 3G to 4G. But so far, it hasn't been essential to the things we're looking at. Now, hyper-connected networks we'll talk about, but that'll be an aspect of it.
Are there any other strong contenders to join the Essential
I was
list?
thinking of quantum computing. I'm just saying
Quantum, sure. So,
Okay.
so quantum, again, not essential yet. So we're experimenting. We're seeing some good use cases, but there's a fundamental shift that will need to happen. The problems we solve today do not lend themselves to quantum. Quantum is a whole different way of computing. So we have to find new problems to solve where quantum will become essential. And we're starting to see those, but it's not yet reached that essential for our clients' businesses. The other thing I'll say is we really focus 2 to 3 years out. We're not trying to predict 10 years out. If I could predict 10 years, I would have bought Bitcoin and be a billionaire. More Bitcoin and been a billionaire. But for us, it's really about impact in the next 2 to 3 years, and that's why they're essential. And quantum's starting to get there, but we haven't had that problem set that it really
Well,
helps us with.
it's true that things change very quickly.
Yes, that's the
Yeah,
one
but
thing that is
it's very
definitely
interesting
happening.
what you said, Scott. It's we haven't found problems to solve, client problems. That's very
That's
yeah,
right.
because the technology is there, but if it's not solving anything yet, you know.
And much smarter people can explain it much better. But I think of quantum as a multi-dimensional solver versus right now we're very much solving linear problems. And if you think about AI, we'll talk about boring AI. We need AI to solve very boring problems. How to read a document and extract
Mhm.
information, efficiently. How to understand pictures and vision, so that we can do something more effectively. Those are pretty boring problems, but they're really important for our businesses. So the AI right now is, to me, very linear versus a quantum, which is going to be a multi-dimensional problem, which we do have. But again, do we need it essentially? I'm not sure yet. We're starting to hit that.
Mhm. Okay, by the way, we have a series of episodes on this Essential 8 recorded some months ago. If you just go on the website, pwc.lu/techtalk, and you will find them all. So I move to the second question, and it's actually a very essential as well. It's in simple words. I mean, I know explaining what technology convergence is in a line could be very challenging, but there is any way you can explain this so the concept stick with us. If someone asks me on the street, "Hey, Luis, I know you are not an expert on technology convergence, but what that is," that would be
Sure.
very cool.
Well, let me first start with how it started. And how it started was the AI plus strategy. So what we found was every emerging tech had an AI plus, so an AI plus IoT or an AI
Mhm.
plus blockchain. What we found was each one was individually very useful. Blockchain, again, one of my favorite topics. There's so many use cases that blockchain was solving for, but blockchain plus AI now become immensely more valuable because we could start to use information in the blockchain in a new way and train AI models to do something really interesting. And I'll give some examples later. So it started out as an AI plus, but then what we found was the convergence was about the multiplying factor of these technologies together. So we've moved past the point where people are asking if they're important. I think if any executive asked me, are the essential 8 important? The simple answer is absolutely. I don't even need to know what industry you're in or what problem you're solving. They're very important. Convergence was about bringing exponential value. So the new value equation was an IoT plus a blockchain plus AI became automating trust. So automating trust is actually the business value. Taking some humans out of an equation around trust, which is very important to us as a firm. That's what we provide, trust. But those three together became much more powerful, much more valuable. And that's how the convergence themes came about. So the simple answer is the 2 times 2 equals 100. It's an equation of value we can't comprehend as humans because these technologies together are much more powerful as
Mhm.
the combination.
Mhm. And maybe the use of them, we still don't know
That's
where
right.
we can go. Interesting. So now let's see how they mingle, Carla.
Yeah. So indeed, PwC has researched how these individual technologies are being used together or converging to create powerful business solutions. And in fact, you've isolated 6 convergence themes on the rise. And you've mentioned one already, which was the hyperconnected networks. Could you give us an overview of what mingles what and with what purpose? I mean, you already mentioned it a bit, but if you can go
Yeah,
into more
sure.
detail.
So I'll kind of go in order of where I think we're seeing the most opportunities to help our clients think through it, and I'll cover each one individually, and we can come back and kind of chat about them. So the first one I'll start with is one that I think was accelerated rapidly because of the world we lived in the last probably 18 months around COVID with lockdowns. So extended reality was a concept we actually came up with and researched and predicted about 2 years ago, maybe two plus, and said that we're seeing this momentum around virtual reality, which is obviously a completely simulated environment, with augmented reality, which is an overlay on the real world around us. Bringing those together, along with artificial intelligence and some Internet of Things, we were extending our own reality. And it was effectively expanding our own user interactions with all of those technologies. And as we started to build this out, obviously with the virtual world we live in, we found very unique instances of how to use this. So extended reality gave us a way to basically create human connection in a virtual world in a different way. So collaborating very differently. There's aspects of training now we can really add an AI simulated human into the mix, and we have some great examples of where we're training people to increase their empathy or build their confidence or train on very complex topics like diversity and inclusion, and it's a very different way to train. Different than sitting in a classroom, different than in e-learning, and we have got a great study that shows how effective it is. So extended reality to me is mixing all of the virtual with the augmented, and then adding in this AI, and adding in a way for us to learn very differently and interact very differently in this new world, which is very different than we're used to traveling around like we used to 2 years ago. Extended reality, I think, is right here in front of us. The second one, I mentioned it briefly, but I think automating trust. If I think back about 4 years, I was working in China. We started this concept of, could we use something like blockchain along with IoT to, increase transparency at first in a supply chain. So could we bring the physical products in a supply chain to life? Could we store information in a blockchain and share it very openly but protect it because it's immutable and unchangeable? And could we follow the life or the travels of a product so that we could bring some new data to life? And we could. Now, adding on top of that some AI, we could start to predict the movement of products better. We could start to understand counterfeit markets better. And the project that I did was about following milk powder that was produced in another country all the way into China and fed to a baby, and making sure it was authentic. So blockchain gave us an irrefutable source of information to say we know everything that touched this product, whether it was a human, a machine, a truck, customs, everything about it was stored in a way that everyone could see and everyone trusted because blockchain. We then used AI to understand, could we understand those counterfeit or gray markets and shut them down? We knew where the products were traveling or should be traveling. So it was really amazing. And the automating trust convergence says we have to take humans a little bit out of the picture, because unfortunately when humans are involved, there's a chance for fraud. We have to be honest. There's a chance for mistakes. There's less data collected, et cetera. So the IoT marking devices or marking products, the blockchain storing information about what happens, and then AI predicting and optimizing those networks. Now we've expanded that around everything beyond supply chain. But to me, this is going to fundamentally change the world. We as a firm are looking at this because we provide some of that trust. So we're looking to use this to really bring more detail and more quality to everything we do in our own businesses, whether it's financial systems, supply chains, healthcare. Think about tracking vaccines today, right? We really want to understand that.
Exactly.
And automating trust is just so critical. So that one I love. I think it's real.
Yeah, I had a look at the converging the emerging technologies, and this is one of my favorite, actually, automating trust.
Well, maybe because of where we are living. I was thinking maybe if we put a chip on the coronavirus, we can track how it spreads.
Yes. It's very small, though. It's hard to make a chip that small. Although I think that's where you asked about some of the other technologies. Material sciences technologies are really started to become something we're looking at, because being able to mark something. I had a sensor over 4 years ago that was a grain of salt, and it was a unique identifier that reacted to light and produced an ID effectively. I mean, think about that, a grain of salt, and that was many years ago. So material sciences are going to help us mark things more effectively. Can we put chemical markers in concrete to understand buildings for the next 30 or 50 years? There's lots happening. Now, we as a firm aren't studying necessarily material sciences, but we'll work with partners and startups that are. So So this is a huge area for us as a firm. I think as a society, we're going to benefit.
Yes, definitely.
So then the next one I'll cover is immersive interfaces. I think I always simplify this one to say the whole world, unfortunately, is built around a keyboard and a mouse or a touchpad. And if you think about whether it's our phones or laptops or computers, there's this human to computer interface that has been very useful and very effective for decades. But immersive interfaces says, if we can make computers more human, so if they can listen, they can speak, they can understand gesture, emotion. I mentioned those computer simulations that we use, simulated humans that understand our emotions. It's more comfortable for us as humans. It's more effective. If we can just speak naturally instead of having to type, we save time. So the immersive interfaces says we have to change the world, and then go on top of that of there's people that can't do some of those things like speak or type or see or hear. So we can open up this world to all sorts of other people that couldn't effectively interact as easily. So immersive interfaces is changing the way we work with computers and information and technology. AI will help with that. So you have AI, you have IoT. It's going to be a combination of robotics, virtual and augmented reality, all of those things together. And once you kind of get into your first virtual simulation, you could never even think about typing. It's the worst interface you could have in a virtual world. It's just speaking, it's moving, it's understanding like we as humans do. So this one I think is further out, but it's something we have to start to design for now. If you think about design thinking and experience design, none of it kind of thinks this way yet because the world still goes through computer and mouse and a screen. And I think that's changing. We're using headsets more and more. We're seeing many more people be much more comfortable in these technologies much faster. And again, I think COVID accelerated the acceptance of this innovation versus created it. And I think people are more comfortable now.
So it's a sort of humanizing the computer.
Yeah, and I struggle with that because it's the cyborg, and you start to think about the science fiction. But yeah, I think it's creating the human interface to the computer or to the technology, and we may not need a computer very soon. The compute will be all around us. It's in the cloud today. We think about the fog around us, all of the devices in our homes or our cities that are smart. You won't have a computer at some point. You'll just be able to speak if you follow Elon, and the Neuralink is going live, very shortly. And now I'm a little concerned about putting something in my brain. But,
exactly, me too.
But it's happening. It's happening. So let's design for it versus fight it, because that's my perspective.
So that was the third convergence.
Yeah, we get more complex here. So the next one is called working autonomy, and we try and simplify this, but the way I describe it is we've probably all heard of a digital twin, where we take something physical and we create a digital twin of it, so some system. Well, to us, working autonomy is having those different systems actually, and I'll talk about that next, digital reflection, but having those systems start to work together and transitioning the manual processes we do today to digital. So not only just one physical system, but maybe many manual systems, humans. And think about what we do in finance, the amount of humans that are thinking and doing process work. Could we unlock more value with automation, robotics, and intelligent systems? So I like to think of RPA as kind of the level zero, the robotic process automation of probably process we don't like or is not that good because it was created by humans. Working autonomy is saying, let's create artificial intelligence to drive robotics, not physical necessarily, but virtual robotics of systems and process in a better way. Could we use blockchain to authenticate and control and protect the systems? You have Internet of Things that may be actually connecting into physical worlds. You could have 3D printers and drones. But really, it's about unlocking value, letting systems optimize themselves. And it's taking that robotic process automation, going into intelligent process automation, all the way to working autonomy, which is self-optimizing systems. Mm-hmm. And one simple example is a self-driving car. It has to optimize in real time all the time to make really good decisions for safety. Mm-hmm. Now, that's still probably a level 0.1, right? We got to get to a level 10 at some point. But working autonomy would be those cars working together to create a network effect of learning, and maybe eventually with a smart city be that true working autonomy is the city is optimizing itself, the cars are optimizing within that, and then there's systems within the car that are optimizing for us. It's playing the best music for the time and my emotion. So working autonomy has many layers, and it's about that true intelligent automation. Mm-hmm. So getting complex, I know. So we'll move on. Unless there's questions, I'll go to digital reflection, which is that digital twin of all of that I just mentioned. So a digital twin being one system, we now have to model and simulate all the systems. And a reflection to me is saying, not only do I see myself in the mirror, but I see my environment around me in the mirror. And digital reflection says, let's actually create simulation models that let us test things out in that whole system and see what will happen. And today, I think we're in the early days of that. We can simulate, some decision, but a digital reflection is truly simulating an entire environment and everything that could impact that environment. And with humans, obviously, there's a lot of wild cards that happen, and the user agent based models have to really become very complex. And now this may be that area that quantum comes in, because the processing here becomes very multidimensional, becomes obviously a very hard problem to solve. And like I said, today we're doing simple simulations and modeling those and seeing decisions be made. But a true digital reflection, like I said, would have almost all of the essential 8, and it would really connect physical to virtual, and it hits every industry. Right now we're focused a lot on the information industry, so whether it's financial services or insurance, because it has a lot of process, and we're trying to take cost out of that. And that's transitioning from manual to digital. Gives us higher quality, gives us more efficiencies. So this one becomes very complex. I think it's still a few years out. We're seeing different examples of it, but I think we're slowly but surely getting there.
But for this digital reflection to happen, I'm just thinking out loud, but the energy necessary to run the models, is it like a lot of energy? I'm asking something that made no sense maybe, but I was just thinking.
No, that's true. I mean, so energy, I think more Bitcoin. I heard Bitcoin is using as much energy as Argentina, right? So the whole country. But
Wow.
for this, it's less about energy and more about compute power. And that's where I said maybe quantum starts to help us here, because we can compute more with less energy. Although there's a lot more complexities. But yeah, no, you're accurate in the sense of like, how do we actually continue to grow the compute power and give it enough data, right? So that's the one thing that's changed over the last 5 to 8 years is big data. Well, I think was evil but necessary. Like it's collected everything. But it's collected in kind of a poor way. But we've got a lot of data. But now compute becomes a problem. But with cloud and the next generations of cloud we're seeing, we have almost infinite accessibility to compute. Now, cost benefit of that becomes the question. To your point, if we create too hard of a problem to solve or too big of a reflection to simulate, is it worth it in the end? What's the decision we're making? Now, I can give some examples where we've, simulated hundreds of thousands of business scenarios, around creating a new business for a new market, for a new product. That could be worth it. If we're just simulating a financial controls decision, I would say that's not worth it, right? We can make that decision. So there will be a balance here.
Okay.
All right.
And so I think there's one to go.
One to go, and finally, I think the one that is most interesting in the sense of the physical nature of this, we call it the hyperconnected network. So what we're focused on here is, and this is where 5G comes in. It could be a lot of the advancements in IoT and artificial intelligence and blockchain and drones. But we're trying to enable real-time services at the edge, and we hear that. But what hyperconnected networks is really truly about increasing the speed of those decisions and the depth of where that decision happens. So can we really truly create smart devices that can make physical decisions, and either smart cities or, like I mentioned, the autonomous car? With that, there's an immense amount of data volumes and bandwidth, and 5G will help with that. But to me, it's mixing 5G with these other radio networks that connect devices, securing it, creating the right data standards and protocols and protections so that we can make sure that it's not compromised, tying all that together and AI optimizing it. And for me, the hyperconnected network, we're seeing very bespoke instances of it, but this will become more ubiquitous. This will be something that helps connect the world, and truly the smart city will have to have a hyperconnected network.
And also probably is the one closer to people,
it is.
That we can tangibly not touch, but we can live that really close to our lives. It's something like it's more obvious.
Everyday life,
right.
yeah.
Everyday
Absolutely. In fact, if you think about our human body as a hyperconnected network, right? You think about how
That's right.
our biology is a hyperconnected network. Everything in our body is connected in a way that makes it
That's
work
right.
perfectly. Now,
Mhm.
the systems around us are not like that. So to me, it's like following a bit of biology in the sense of how we eventually would build cities or communities so that we can take advantage and optimize so that we get the most out of it. And that's
Mhm.
what I think the human body is a perfect example of a hyperconnected network.
My
That's
next question
amazing.
was about examples, but I think you have given really many. So,
I try to along the way, but I'm happy to give
so
more.
I will just skip that one and go move to the next one. So now, most of the convergence we see or we understand, like normal people walking on the streets, are linked to telecommunications, information technology, broadcasting. I don't know. I'm thinking of, I don't know, Spotify and how digital mix a little bit of everything, the TV world with the digital world, and it just got together. But in other industries, you have any like tangible example that we are seeing already?
So I could name every industry for every one of these convergence. The ones I get excited about, I mentioned supply chain. I think any physical product, whether it's retail and consumer, understanding more about what people are buying because we can mark and follow it a little bit better using blockchain and IoT, but we can optimize the supply chain of how it got there. Think about healthcare. Like I said, the vaccines is an obvious one, but understanding health records in a different way using blockchain and being able to share that and protect it. You think about financial services, which I know obviously at Luxembourg is a center of financial services. There's so much optimization we can do around our systems with automated trust. And unfortunately, it means some businesses will go away because they literally are providing the trust in the middle. Things like blockchain start to create a distributed ledger. Everyone can see the transactions. We don't need someone to verify it. We're an accounting firm, right? That's a lot of what we do
Mhm.
as a firm, right? So we're focused on, we still want to assure businesses, but we don't necessarily have to understand the both sides of a ledger because it's only one ledger. But what happened in the ledger, we still have to understand. And we're far away from AI being able to do that. So I think the optimization across financial services, insurance, is amazing, right? There's going to
Mhm.
be a lot of upside on cost savings. We can reinvest that into innovation to create new markets. We're going to have new sets of data. Can we share more from a consortium perspective? You think about what's happening. I did a little research, but I realized that the Luxembourg Parliament just approved securities being managed in a distributed ledger. That's awesome, right? You think about the cost that'll take out, what the innovation that it'll create. What now can we do when we have this new technology that's fundamentally underpinning what we're doing? Kind of a legacy thing, securities that have been around for a long time. I think about climate and how do we think differently about carbon and credits and all these things so that we can do it more globally. There's just an immense amount of upside for society, and that's what as PwC we're really focused on is solving important problems, building trust in society. A lot of these convergence teams really focus on that: logistics, medical supplies, supply chain around that, streamlining and effectively helping everything in the insurance supply chain, from claims adjusters having augmented reality glasses and having an expert help them adjust something and understand a catastrophe in real time, drones flying after a hurricane so that we don't have to put people in dark, dangerous, or dirty situations, virtual reality helping them train so that they could understand 3 or 5 or 100 scenarios that today would be too cost prohibitive to do. Not having to move people around as much, yet putting them in places virtually that they have to be. Just huge upside. And again, across all of the convergence, you see that they really span every industry. So I think it's almost unlimited, and that's where we say that the convergence. It's hello tomorrow. It's here. All of these are very feasible today, and I think it's really applicable no matter where you live in the world.
Well, honestly, I am quite amazed listening to you, Scott. I think the possibilities are
Uh,
immense, and it's
Endless and fascinating, and
exactly.
sometimes scary. Sometimes
Yes,
scary too.
also
Yeah.
scary, but I think I see it optimistically somehow.
No, I do too. If you can't tell, I get excited, but I think we're really also focused on doing it responsibly, and that's the word we like to use: responsible technology. So whether it's responsible AI, putting guardrails in place today, I mentioned if we have a true working autonomy, a system that manages itself, I want to know that that system is trusted. And we as a firm are really focused on building responsible AI so that the way AI learns is unbiased, it's transparent. The way decisions are made right now are fairly opaque. We need to have better understanding of decisions, and then we need to know that those decisions are in the best interest of humans. This is a human X, meaning human, extension. We want to extend the human experience. We want to make it better, extraordinary. We say we don't want to cut humans out of it. Mind and machine together is better. But there's a lot of work to do to make sure that that's the way we go.
Exactly.
And responsible technology is so key right now because we're setting some of these standards in place. And I go back to the automated car. Whoever makes it right now has the ability to shut it off, and that means you can't move. There is no physical backup on these, right? And that's scary to me, right? Because that's our way we transport ourselves. So we have to make sure that we have controls in place.
Absolutely. I always, when I think of this new technology and convergence, I also think of cybersecurity always, and how this will evolve as well, and the need to have such an advanced cybersecurity measures and levels and technology too. So it has to run in parallel because the bad ones are always faster.
Yes. I hate to say it, but sometimes the criminals are out ahead because there's a vested interest in. I use an example around blockchain. I believe personally, when blockchain was created by whomever Satoshi is,
we don't know.
we're not going to go into that. That's a different podcast.
Exactly.
I have my theories, but I think Bitcoin was created very brilliantly as an elegant solution to test the security of the blockchain. So if you put value in there, bad people will try and get it. So for 12 or so years now, bad people have tried to get it, and no matter what you've heard, it's never been gotten out of the blockchain. It's been gotten out of the ends of the blockchain, so that where the humans are involved. And I think it was elegant. Bitcoin was a way to test the security of it. But to your point, the cyber aspects of all of this are immense.
Yep.
I think privacy is another aspect of this that is something we have yet to understand. When we start to store things in a blockchain, it's there forever and it never can be changed. That is, you have to really think about what you put in that blockchain, now. And we were just, doing a project, and just the immensity of it hit me. This never goes away. It's only going to get bigger, and all of the information is there forever. So those are things we've never had to really deal with as a society or as humans. So it's exciting, and I'm positive about it. And I think we'll do the right thing in general, but we do have to put safeguards in place.
And then the next question we have, I think it's kind of obvious, but it's digital as an entity, the glue of all, the superhero behind this. What is actually boosting or driving all this convergence? Is the fact that digital has reached that point to become a real true enabler of this?
Wow, yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't even know how to answer that because the word digital has become so large that it is everything.
That's true.
And if I think about what's gluing this together, I hate the cliche of data is the new oil. The fact that we have the data, I think that the ability to capture information and store it was the fundamental change for us. We've always done that as humans, but it's been limited physically. Mm-hmm. So back to stone tablets, to written scrolls, to when computers, they were limited. We've almost gotten to the point of unlimited storage forever, and that's been the change because that then unlocks anything we want to do. So digital, I think, encompasses some of that, but it then gets into the connectivity. I go back to working. I worked on the first browser in the '90s, and e-commerce. There's all sorts of digital that. It's just such a broad term. So it would be the glue, but it's also like saying, technology would be the glue, which is so broad. I think it comes back to the ability to store and access data forever, or at unlimited ability to do that. I think is one of the key changes for us.
Carol, you go with the next one if you want to.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, Scott mentioned some advantages, I think, but that's the question actually. There are several advantages for sure, like pairing complementary technologies into one solution. Is there any other advantages that you can cite?
For convergence, I think it's exponential value. So there's advantages of using AI. There's advantages using IoT, but the exponential value of those two together, I think that's really why we're focused on it. It they're very different skill sets, so it's not easy. But if you can get it right, the exponential value is there. That's why I made the joke: 2 times 2 is 100. It's not even calculatable. That's a word. It's really this exponential value that I think is the main advantage of converging some of these things.
Mm-hmm. So, and then I will jump to the question that was after. But I think now that we are talking about advantages, we can talk about disadvantages. Have you noticed something? You know what I think, Scott, all the time is how people will react, because we always have the social side of this that I mean, I am an engineer and we tend to forget, and maybe you are too, we tend to forget this. We always like our toy, the toy we are developing, but we don't know if the toy will be, people will like it or accept it. And then,
Yes.
then is when we run into trouble. And I don't know, that's my view, but maybe you have another disadvantages you have already noticed.
Yeah, I think that's, we like I said, we've come up with this human X. I think the biggest disadvantage is it immediately cuts a human out of the equation, and that's not the intention of these technologies. And what we can't do is go into these thinking we're just going to get rid of the people. That would be the worst thing. Then we get into the science fiction movies where the robots are running the world. I think that the disadvantages are, you're going to be left out. Some of these things happen so fast, and I'll talk about maybe crypto for an example right now. When I was in Hong Kong and China, in 2014, 15, crypto was one of the number one topics, and the regulators were talking about it. Every business was talking about it. They were accepting it. Whereas in the U.S. at the time, it was really kind of off limits. And I don't unfortunately know in Europe how, at that time what it was looking like. Well, I can say right now in the U.S. we're behind because it happened overnight. Now everything is moving, and you've probably seen some of the big press in the U.S. Very large companies putting billions of dollars into Bitcoin as a value store. Wow, that happened overnight. Now, so these technologies, we hear about Moore's law. I think the pace of change is happening much faster. So the disadvantage of not paying attention is you get left behind overnight. And you hear about that, but this is so broad. It's going to fundamentally change industries. If you think about taking out complete intermediary markets for financial services, that's a big change, right?
Exactly.
And that could change countries. There's certain countries that are just set up to be intermediaries for financial services. I don't know who those are, but
that can change Luxembourg.
They could change Luxembourg, right?
Definitely.
If you don't at least understand and research and invest, it could be gone. Maybe not overnight, but over a week or two. It's not any longer a 10-year change or a 5-year change. I think we're seeing change happen in months or quarters. Yeah. And it's not meant to scare or to be doom and gloom. I think it's for the better. We're changing for the better. And if you're ahead of that change, you're going to be on the upside of that change, right? So think about those firms that were looking at crypto when billions of dollars came in from big corporates. They're ready. They're ready. They have new businesses ready to go. And that's why we're so passionate about it. So I think the disadvantages are obvious, but they're much more accelerated than they used to be. So the business strategies have to adapt much faster.
It's nice because when you're answering, you're already answering questions that we already have, or we had prepared, and because
I have to predict the future,
you predicted, right? Because one of those was precisely, I was a bit challenging one, and it was, I am not at all as expert as you are in blockchain, but I like to read about blockchain and these distributed ledger technologies and what they are supposed to do and how promising they are, but also a lot of articles saying we haven't got there yet, and we don't know if we will really get there, because it is challenging a complete entire system.
Yes.
And are people behind that system, the power, this is all about power. Are we give up that power? I think there will be a clash, like gigantic clash, and that's my kind of I don't know, not pessimistic, but maybe Armageddon future I can foresee. I don't know.
I was going to say cautious, but
Armageddon.
Armageddon, cautious.
Armageddon.
You're right, though. I mean, it gets way outside my my knowledge graph, but you think about fiat currencies and central banks and taxes and control of money and things like crypto and blockchain fundamentally challenge all of those things. And
Absolutely.
that's world leaders getting involved. And sitting here in the US, we've just printed trillions of dollars, so the value of currency is questionable, whereas the value of crypto is not. It's mathematically proven, not maybe not the value but the uniqueness of crypto. So it is a worldwide mega issue when you think about what distributed ledgers and or crypto bring to the table. I just simplify and go back to automating trust. The upside of automating trust is better for everyone, and no one can argue that. So let's just focus there versus trying to solve the global financial question, because I think those two will eventually meet, and we're seeing it rapidly accelerate. But the technology itself is proven, right? And people can argue it's not at scale, but it really is, right, in certain areas. So supply chain transparency and using it to store data in a different way. And it was things that we could do before with a distributed database, for example, but it was never as easily accessible for many parties to use. And the public or open nature of it is different. So there's a lot happening that I would say that the technology is being proven. It's not as old as the internet. You think about the internet is, back in the early 90s for commercial uses. I mean, blockchain is 2010, let's call it. So 11 years barely. So it's, less than a half or a third is old. So we've got a long way to go. And if you think about to the early days of the internet, it was the same question, right? I was sitting in front of, I was much younger then, sitting in front of clients saying, you need to get on email and you need to get an e-commerce site. And they just laughed and said, no one will ever buy insurance on the internet. And guess what? they do today.
Exactly.
But it took a while. So I think the same thing for blockchain, but then crypto is a whole different ballgame. To your point, that gets into governments, that gets into people's livelihoods and retirements, and that's a much bigger societal issue that, again, outside my knowledge graph of where that'll go.
I think it challenges the most stable business in the world, which is banking and financial services.
Yes.
And how this happens and how it's governed. That is the problem, I think.
Yes.
Well, the challenge behind.
The challenge or opportunity, depending on which side you're on.
Opportunity. Yeah. Well, you know what? My mother tongue is Spanish, and in Spanish, challenge is never negative. It's something you have to overcome to get better.
I like that.
We never take. That's why I use challenge not as a negative word, but as something that pushes further.
I love that.
Maybe that's my way. Oh yes, very positive. So Carla, you have one more, I think.
Yes, I do. Speaking of Luxembourg, and you mentioned that financial services is something very important here for the Luxembourgish economy. So we thought about all these convergences, and we thought about which ones might be of interest or appear more attractive to Luxembourg. And we thought of two: automating trust and working autonomy. So what do you think about our choice?
Makes sense. Do they make sense?
Do we pass the test?
Yeah, I mean, you hit my favorite topic with blockchain, kind of on both of them to some degree. But I think I've gone through the automating trust is a no-brainer. I think there's so much, unfortunately, waste in the financial services systems, right? Because and people are in the middle. There's a lot of upside. And I mentioned the quick research I did around the prominent digital ledger technology being approved. There's so much we can do and get higher quality data. We can get more optimization across the network. And automating trust to me is a no-brainer for Luxembourg. And there's a lot of upside. I think very little downside. The downside is people's jobs change, not go away, right? Like I said, beginning about what we do as a firm, we're still going to assure businesses and make sure what's happening is supposed to happen. But we don't necessarily have to go through ledgers to match it first, right? That'll be great. And I think just in general across financial services and countries that exist to make this better, I think automating trust will be only upside. I think working autonomy is tougher because there's a lot that you have to automate that may be outside of your control, but I think it's an area that has to be a focus. So I think it's a great choice, but I think it's really hard. And I have not visited Luxembourg. I hope to one day. But I imagine you have a lot of different countries that you deal with, and businesses in different countries, and that is where it becomes more difficult because you can't enforce standards as easily, which means automation is harder, which means you don't get the working autonomy benefits. But the value side of that is massive. And if you tie that to, if you can automate the trust, then you can get the autonomy of systems, much more optimized. So those two go hand in hand. And for financial services meccas or hubs like yours, I think absolutely the value equation is there.
Well, maybe I have just the last one, just the last one. Can I
Yeah,
ask
yeah,
that
sure.
one? And it's about, in fact, it's about people always in academia. Academia and maybe I say something politically incorrect, but tend to lag behind sometimes. The technology and businesses move, and academia is there, like it's still, it's like a
Mm-hmm.
big elephant moving slower. And the question is, if you think it's catching up with this technology, technology, I don't know how to call it, tornado. And yeah, I don't know, because it's so quick. And the other is if, again, if people are, I just, when I talk to people, they are kind of fearful.
Mm-hmm. So I'll answer both of those. So first, catching up, no. Woken up, yes. I think academia has woken up. I think they realize how far behind they are. And I think it's different in every country. I mentioned I lived in China. They've fundamentally changed the education system. And they have some ability to do that more than other countries because they can just make it happen. But at the scale they made it happen is impressive. I'd say in the US, there's a wake up, I can tell you for sure. I've had so many conversations in the past 12 months with university professors and presidents, and they're very, very interested. In fact, in my father's honor, I've just made a donation to my university to build a virtual reality lab. And, that was something I want to do for my dad, but they are so interested in doing something different. And I went there to be a pilot. It's an aviation school. So the computer science, department is not that large, but for them to invest in a virtual reality lab, obviously because I'm helping them pay for it, but it shows that, but that's a fundamental change. So the universities have to really accelerate. Now, don't get me wrong, there's great examples of ones that have done amazing things in technology, but in wholesale, I think we're not catching up yet, but hopefully soon. And I unfortunately don't know about Europe. I've not spent any time in the universities there, but I would imagine it's similar, where it's still a little bit legacy mindset in teaching. So hopefully the wake up is happening. Now, on the people side, I think people are fearful. And, I think we've gone through this in many generations when we went from agricultural to industrial and industrial to information. Now, what's the next wave? What? Automation. What we want to continue to talk about is the fact that it's a human extension. It's not a human replacement. Mm-hmm. And if we can continue that and get people to focus on that way, we're going to be in better shape. Now, capitalism will squeeze humans out in some parts. There's no doubt, because the profits will prevail. But humans are very adaptable. Like, I don't know what the exact stat is, but in 1900, 90% of us were farmers. And while I am getting into farming, it's not something that sustains me at the moment. And not a lot of people farm, and we have more food than ever. So, humans are adaptable, but it does take, generations sometimes. So what we don't want is a lost generation. And I'll finish with, if you look at kids today, and I don't have young kid, they're on tablets from the time they're 1.5, and maybe with bad parents. Maybe they shouldn't be, but they're on tablets early, right? Because it makes life easier for parents. But they're used to that immersive interface. Like, a 7 or 8-year-old doesn't type; they talk or they swipe, or they have a whole different interaction with computers. So I think it's fundamentally changing our biology. We're all kind of hyper aware and multitasking, which 10 or 20 years ago we weren't. So I think we'll see humans adapt fast. So I'm positive. I'm always positive, but I'm positive that we'll adapt here. But we have to bring everyone along. And our firm leader here, Tim, he's always said we're going to upskill everyone's digital IQ. Doesn't matter what you do in the firm. Everyone. This is not an opt-in. This is an opt-out. If you don't want to do it, this is not the firm for you. We're going to bring everyone's digital IQ up. because it doesn't matter. Every job is technology based now.
I think that's very important. I mean, people's mindsets also need to be.
That's right.
Exactly.
People, yeah, exactly. I think it's that's very important. People need to be onboarded, accept change.
Mm-hmm.
That's not always easy, but.
Well, I think it was a wonderful conversation. I just don't want to finish without saying that what I don't want for the world is a future like Elysium.
Yes, right. We do not want to
Please,
go.
I
Some of
don't
these
want that.
movies, not good. Yeah.
I love those movies, but they are. I don't want that for this
See, I'm
beautiful
I'm
planet.
I'm
I
more
never
against
watched those
Terminator.
movies.
I'm more against Terminator. That's the one I don't want.
So thanks a lot. Really, thanks a lot. It
Thank
was
you.
such a nice, insightful, friendly conversation. We have learned a lot because these things are, we don't talk to people that know something not about these things every day. So it was very, very nice
Yeah.
of you, Scott. Thanks a lot. And like we always say nowadays, keep safe.
Yes, I'm
Keep safe.
out here on my ranch with my goats, chickens, and horse, and I'm fine. I will be safe.
You're
So
in the
thank you for
right
having me.
place.
Yes,
Thanks.
yes.
Thanks a lot, and see you in the next
Thank
episode.
you.
Thanks for tuning
Cheers.
in. Ciao, ciao. And that was all for today. This is Tech Talk, technology made simple over a cup of coffee. Thanks for listening, and until the next episode.